So thank you for coming. We're here for a reason. Without the death of Mr. Floyd, we wouldn't be here. And a lot's happened in the last couple of weeks. So my goal is try to define the problem, offer solutions, and talk to each other, not past each other. And I have a short video that is tough to watch, and I talked to Senator Booker about it the first couple of minutes. But it ends up on a very positive note, and we'll see if we can go from really hard to watch to something that is a little more acceptable to the country. If you could roll the video. Is it working?
Can we consider it an act of God and just not
That
vote?
could be. Well,
What do we expect to see?
you're expecting to see a video, but you're not. So I'll just talk. The video is about Mr. Floyd and his very painful death. It's about the gentleman who was jogging in Georgia and got shot. It was about the recent Atlanta case. It was about 2 episodes of a cop pulling a woman out of a burning car and a police officer administering CPR to a very young, like a month-old infant. And it winds up with the cops and the protesters taking a knee together and hugging and trying to work through their problems. So if we could wind up there as a country, that'd be a good thing. So Senator Scott is going to introduce tomorrow the Republican approach to reforming the police. I don't know, I'll let the committee members speak for themselves, but I don't see a whole lot of energy by any of us here to defund the police. I think there's a lot of effort to reform the police. So Senator Scott will introduce that package tomorrow. President Trump introduced through executive order some ideas, and I compliment him from doing that. Rather than laundry listing what's in all of these packages, the House passed a fairly broad policing reform bill. I would like the committee, if possible, when this calms down a bit, for us to sit down, if we can reconcile these packages and come up with something in common. So what brings us here? I've learned over the years, but particularly recently, that every black man in America apparently feels threatened when they're stopped by the cops. That it's not 99%, it's like 100%. I've talked to a lot of African-American pastors at home, and in their churches, when a young man gets able to drive or old enough to be considered a young man, they have a talk about what you do if you're stopped by the police. You keep your hands on the wheel. You don't reach for the dash. You say yes or no, sir. I think Senator Booker's mentioned that. Senator Scott said he's been stopped 5 or 6 times on Capitol Hill. I've never been stopped. And when I see a cop behind me, the first thing I think about is, what did I do wrong, and can I talk myself out of this ticket? There's literally no fear. And I wouldn't like to live in a country where I'd be afraid to be stopped. So hopefully we can all understand that problem and fix it, but it is a problem. Every black man in America, virtually every black man in America, feels like if they get stopped by the cop, it's a traumatic experience. Use of force. We want police officers to protect themselves and protect us, but Mr. Floyd died for a $20 bill. You see the video, he was in handcuffs, wasn't threatening anybody. How you go from that to dead is just amazing. The Atlanta thing is a bit more difficult. He had a pretty good interaction that went bad quickly. Shooting somebody should be like the last resort, because once you're dead, you're dead. You know, if the guy gets away, you can catch him again. but the idea of using lethal force has to be revisited. Being a cop is no easy thing. You make a lot of snap decisions where your life is threatened and that of the community. But we got to realize that taking another human being's life while in police custody is something we should be better at in 2020 than we are. Defund the police, not much for that. Reforming the police, a lot. Better community police practicing. What areas of the country have got it more right than others? I'm going to ask our first panel when we get a chance here. If the person approaching you is an African-American officer, is it different than if it's a white officer? If the person approaching you in uniform is a woman, is that a different experience than if it's a man? Seems to me that one of the things we should be trying to do is have people more African-American and people of color, more women in policing to make the police force look more like the community they're policing. Chokeholds. Apparently, the president came out with a call to abolish chokeholds. The House did that. Seems to me that it's come time for us to move on from chokeholds. Better hiring and better firing. We're going to have a lot of input from police officers, particularly unions. A complaint can be lodged against any of us, an ethics complaint. We have a system here where we dispose of those complaints privately. I've had like 7 or 8 complaints filed against me at the South Carolina Bar Association for different things I said during the Kavanaugh hearing and others. You know, I think they're a bunch of BS. The bottom line is that is a private endeavor. The question about filing complaints against police officers, it would be so easy to ruin somebody's life as a cop and try to intimidate the police force. But there's got to be a way that you can understand that when the complaints are legitimate to take action. We have to be honest with ourselves and ask the question, is it too hard to fire a cop? And when you have documented instances of acting outside the law, too much force, you don't have the right attitude to be a cop, how does that stay in your file to make sure that the town next door knows about it? Qualified immunity. Is it come time to revisit that? I don't think most cops want to go into the business if they can lose their house if they make a mistake. But maybe there's something we can do with the concept of qualified immunity that would put more accountability into the agencies that run police departments. The one thing I can tell you that if you're subject to being sued, you act differently than if you're not. And we don't want to deter people from going into law enforcement, but we also want to have a sense of accountability. And to the extent that qualified immunity fosters a sense of, it's really not my problem, let's take a look at it. More accountability, more information, a national registry about how many people actually die in police custody, a national registry about the instances of using lethal force while in custody. The time has come to create a system to combat a broken system. Is policing in America systematically a racist enterprise? I'd like to think not, because I do believe most cops are far more good than bad. But when every black man in America believes that getting stopped by the cops is a traumatic experience, something happened somehow, somewhere. And I'd like to have a systematic approach to problems that continue to happen over and over again. So there are a lot of ideas coming from different corners of the political spectrum. The question for the committee, is it possible to find common ground? The answer is obviously yes, if we want to. as chairman, I would like to.